Welcome back. Today is Tissue Tuesday. Today I want to focus on a concept that comes from Dr. Gary Sibbald. I've been preaching from the Gospel of Sibbald as long as I've had this career. And he actually uses an acronym called TIME. So tissue or debridement is what the T stands for. Infection is the next one. Moisture balance, and then edge or epithelialization. So it's a great concept that is what we're actually doing when we're first assessing and looking at the wounds. But what I want to do is go through tissues to start. I think I'll do a bit of a series here on how that acronym actually fits into wound care and break it down a little bit so we get some more of the practical applications of it. I will copy the link for the original article written by Dr. Sibbald in the link here, as well as the updated version that came out, I think, back in 2014. Anyhow, so I want to talk about maceration. Maceration is one of the types of tissue that we're going to see when we have a lot of diabetic foot ulcers. Don't tend to see a lot of maceration anywhere else but on the lower legs. The odd time in some other wounds that have been left wet too long. That's basically what maceration is. It means that the tissue has sat in moisture for way too long. Why this becomes so important, though, is that what will happen is if the tissue continues to stay wet, it'll get bigger, like you can notice in this photo here. There's a very large area of maceration around it, and there's a really large callus on it. So the problem is with diabetic foot ulcers like this, the callus continues to build, and the wound still continues to stay wet. So if you actually notice, after the callus was reduced with this wound, there's still actually a lot of maceration underneath. So this usually is a sign that tells us, okay, A, it's too wet, B, the callus needs to be reduced, and C, you're actually not going to get any healing as long as it stays wet. Why? Because with the added moisture, you will not get epithelial tissue, which is basically scar tissue. It will not form along the edge as long as it stays wet. So there's lots of concepts in the wound care continuum that says, oh, we want to leave dressings on for a long period of time. We want to reduce dressings. And yes, this is true. However, we also have to look at, how are we going to treat the maceration first? So often the reason why these are happening is that the patients have their foot in a boot. The boot can be hot, sweaty. They've worked all day in it, and they're not able to control the moisture themselves. So leaving these dressings, especially for a long period of time, I know we want to reduce them to go down to 2 or 3 days, but when they're this wet, they cannot be left. So again, we really have to look at the reasons why the patient has all this moisture. It's one thing if they just had a shower, came over to get their dressing changed, and yes, it was a little wet. That's one thing. But the majority of people with diabetic foot ulcers, it's because they're in a wet shoe or they've been working and it's continuously wet. These dressings are actually ones that you can change daily because you want to control that maceration. If you don't control the maceration, you're never going to get new epithelium, you're never going to get scar tissue to form. So it's a concept that often we're heard, especially in community, that we want to reduce, we want to be down to every other day, we want to be down to 3 times a day or every 3 days, but in some cases you can't. If you're seeing maceration present, we can teach the patients to change their own dressings. These are fairly simple for the most part to do. Again, we have to consider their environment, their ability to bend and whatnot, but if we are, it isn't a bad thing to actually change something daily, especially if there is maceration. So hopefully that helps to clarify the dressing frequency. And again, it's not something that just because as a community nurse that if you're seeing this that means you have to change it daily. It is something that we want to be able to teach our patients to do and to make sure that we're reducing this maceration so it's less wet. We can increase bulk to dressings, but we, for the most part, sometimes just have to increase the frequency. Great. If you have any comments or want any other tips on this, just drop it down for me. Thanks.